You're listening to the CyberWire Network, powered by N2K.
Hackers target Russia's court information system. We got a Patch Tuesday rundown. GoldenJackal targets government and diplomatic entities in Europe, the Middle East, and South Asia. Cybercriminals are exploiting Florida's disaster relief efforts. Australia introduces its first standalone cybersecurity law. CISA and the FBI issue guidance against Iranian threat actors. Mamba 2FA targets Microsoft 365 accounts. Casio reports a data breach. On our Solutions Spotlight, Simone Petrella speaks with Andy Woolnough from ISC2 about their 2024 cybersecurity workforce study and keeping the AI slop off Wikipedia. It's Wednesday, October 9th, 2024. I'm Dave Bittner, and this is your CyberWire Intel Briefing. Thanks for joining us once again here today. It is great, as always, to have you here. Russia experienced significant digital disruptions for a second day following a cyber attack on its court information system, reportedly by a hacker group called BO Team. The group claimed to have wiped court documents, timing the attack to coincide with President Vladimir Putin's 72nd birthday. This follows another large-scale attack on Russian state media channels on Monday, which disrupted multiple television and radio stations. The VGTRK media company resumed online broadcasting, but court websites remained offline. Cyber attacks have become a frequent tactic in the ongoing Ukraine-Russia conflict. Russian intelligence attributed the media attack to a Ukrainian-linked hacker group. Although Russia has ramped up its cyber attacks on Ukraine, the effectiveness has diminished as Ukraine bolsters its cybersecurity defenses. Recent reports also reveal Russia's GRU military intelligence has targeted NATO and European countries. Meanwhile, Putin's birthday saw celebratory messages from Russian officials and nationalist figures, highlighting his continued influence despite the digital chaos. Yesterday was Patch Tuesday, and Microsoft released security updates to address 117 vulnerabilities across Windows and other software, including 2 zero-day flaws already being exploited. One of these is a vulnerability in MS-HTML, the engine behind Internet Explorer, which allows attackers to trick users into interacting with malicious content through phishing attacks. Despite Internet Explorer being retired, its underlying technology remains in use, posing risks to certain systems. The more serious zero-day is a code execution flaw in Microsoft Management Console, which could allow attackers to gain unauthorized control. Microsoft has patched this issue to prevent untrusted files from being opened. Meanwhile, Apple fixed a macOS 15 Sequoia bug that affected various security tools, and Adobe released updates for 52 vulnerabilities across its product range. Users are encouraged to back up data before applying updates to avoid potential compatibility issues. GoldenJackal, an advanced persistent threat group active since at least 2019, has garnered attention for successfully breaching air-gapped systems, networks isolated from the Internet, targeting government and diplomatic entities in Europe, the Middle East, and South Asia. This level of sophistication is typically seen only in nation-state actors. Researchers from ESET revealed GoldenJackal's use of 2 distinct toolsets for these breaches. The first toolset, used in a South Asian embassy, includes Golden Dealer, which delivers executables via USB, Golden Howl, a modular backdoor, and Golden Robo, a drive accessing component. A second tool set was deployed in attacks on a European Union governmental organization, allowing data collection and exfiltration. GoldenJackal's ability to breach air-gapped systems with tailored tools within 5 years is unprecedented, but researchers note that their methods, while sophisticated, contain flaws that defenders can observe and counter. Cybercriminals are exploiting Florida's disaster relief efforts amid recovery from Hurricane Helene and preparations for Hurricane Milton. Scammers are targeting vulnerable individuals and organizations with phishing campaigns, fake FEMA claims, and malware disguised as legitimate FEMA documents. Cybersecurity firm Verity uncovered scams involving fraudulent FEMA claims and phishing websites masquerading as hurricane relief resources. These fake sites trick victims into providing sensitive information, such as Social Security numbers, by creating a sense of urgency. Additionally, cybercriminals are disguising malware in PDF files, which appear legitimate but contain harmful code. While no active infections have been reported, these threats highlight the dangers of cyber attacks during disasters. The Australian government introduced its first standalone cybersecurity law, the Cybersecurity Bill 2024, to better protect citizens and organizations amid rising cyber threats. The bill mandates minimum cybersecurity standards for IoT devices, such as secure settings and regular updates. It also introduces mandatory ransomware reporting for critical infrastructure organizations, requiring them to notify the Australian Signals Directorate within 72 hours of making a payment. Additionally, the bill establishes a Cyber Incident Review Board to assess significant cyber incidents and implements reforms to the Security of Critical Infrastructure Act. These reforms aim to simplify information sharing between industries and the government, improving responses to all-hazard incidents. The legislation is part of Australia's 2023-2030 cybersecurity strategy and provides a comprehensive framework to address whole-of-economy cybersecurity challenges. CISA and the FBI have issued new guidance to combat escalating cyber threats from Iranian actors targeting national political organizations. The guidance warns that cyber actors linked to Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps are using social engineering tactics such as impersonating contacts and directing victims to fake login pages to compromise accounts of senior officials, activists, and journalists. CISA recommends using phishing-resistant multi-factor authentication, password managers, and vigilance against unsolicited communications to help mitigate these threats, which aim to undermine confidence in democratic institutions. Mamba 2FA is an emerging phishing-as-a-service platform targeting Microsoft 365 accounts using adversary-in-the-middle techniques to bypass multi-factor authentication. Priced at $250 a month, it allows cybercriminals to capture authentication tokens, enabling unauthorized access to victims' accounts. First tracked in May of this year, Mamba 2FA has supported phishing campaigns since November 2023, evolving its infrastructure to avoid detection. Recent updates include the use of proxy servers from IP Royal to mask IP addresses and rotating phishing domains weekly. Mamba 2FA provides phishing templates for Microsoft 365 services and dynamically mimics organizational branding for a more convincing attack. Stolen credentials are delivered to attackers via a Telegram bot, enabling immediate access. To defend against such attacks, organizations should adopt security measures like hardware keys, certificate-based authentication, and token lifespan management. On October 5th, Casio experienced a cyber attack that caused system failures, leaving some customer services unavailable. The Japanese tech company is investigating the breach, along with external specialists, to determine whether personal or sensitive data was leaked. Casio has not specified which customer systems were affected, whether it was a ransomware attack or if the hackers identified themselves. The attack follows a 2022 breach where information from Casio's ClassPad.net education platform was compromised, impacting customers in 148 countries. In this recent breach, over 120,000 pieces of information, including customer names, Email addresses and order details were exposed, though credit card information was not affected. The company reported the breach to authorities and implemented security measures, including restricting external access to its network. Coming up after the break on our Solutions Spotlight, Andy Woolnough from ISC2 talks about their 2024 Cybersecurity Workforce Study. Stay with us. When it comes to ensuring your company has top-notch security practices, things can get complicated fast. Vanta automates compliance for SOC 2, ISO 27001, HIPAA, and more, saving you time and money. With Vanta, you can streamline security reviews by automating questionnaires and demonstrating your security posture with a customer-facing trust center. Over 7,000 global companies like Atlassian, Flow Health, and Quora use Vanta to manage risk and prove security in real time. Our listeners can claim a special offer of $1,000 off Vanta at vanta.com/cyber. That's VANTA.com/cyber for $1,000 off Vanta. And now, a word from our sponsor, Cortex. Security teams face a barrage of more security tools create more complexity, more devices need protection, more specialized focus areas create more silos. The security landscape is changing fast. How can security operations transform to meet current threats? Cortex by Palo Alto Networks consolidates SecOps tools into an integrated platform and helps organizations stop threats at scale with AI, automation, and analytics. Learn more at paloaltonetworks.com/Cortex. Andy Woolnough is Executive Vice President for Corporate Affairs at ISC2. And in today's Solutions Spotlight, he speaks with our own Simone Petrella about ISC2's 2024 Cybersecurity Workforce Study.
I am thrilled to be joined today by Andy Woolnough. Thank you so much for joining me today, Andy.
Thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, so I want to start because ISC2 just in September put out your annual workforce study, or at least the first look of it. And before we dive into it, can you tell me a little bit about the history of ISC2 in doing these workforce studies and why it's so important for the organization to kind of have a finger on the pulse of global profession like you do today?
Sure, I'm happy to, and thanks for the question. As you know, ISC2 is one of the world's sort of largest sort of membership associations for cybersecurity professionals, and we thought it was really important for us to take an annual pulse check of how the profession is feeling about certain issues on a regular basis, so that we can feed that feedback back into a number of places within our own organization in some of the professional education and learning and development tools that we offer our membership. So we can feed it back into governments as they're thinking about policy, especially around important areas like AI, but also as they think about developing their workforce in cybersecurity as well. So we can feed it back into organizations who we work with, who are, in financial services or in energy or government or wherever it is, so they can understand what's going on with cybersecurity professionals. But also it's a really important benchmark for a number of tangential issues that we see in cybersecurity around things like burnout in the profession and the sorts of things that cybersecurity people are looking at. Things like investment in cybersecurity teams, both in career investment, but also skills training and development. What skills are important to cybersecurity professionals and hiring managers, so we can try and match them up there. but also important topics like DEI and what the state of the diversity and inclusion in cybersecurity is. So it tells us all of these things on an annual basis.
One of the things that I think, really struck me this year was that the study indicated that this was the first year that the cybersecurity workforce growth has stalled, with a relatively modest, if almost insignificant, growth of like 0.1%. So we're kind of stuck at 5.5 million global professionals. What do you think are some of the reasons for that stagnation this year?
Well, so what the recipients told us was for the first year, it wasn't so much a lack of talent that they were seeing was stalling the workforce, but a lack of investment. And they thought that it was attributable mainly to economic conditions that we're seeing around the world. Now, it's important to note there was nuance within that. We didn't see stagnation throughout the globe. We measure a number of different countries and we look at sort of recipients from Australia all the way through Europe into Africa and to the United States. And yes, large markets like the US, the UK were fairly stagnant. And that's important to note that that's probably off quite a high base as well. Those are quite developed markets when it comes to cybersecurity in relative terms. Where we see a lot of growth was in some parts of Europe, in places like the Netherlands and Germany, but also in Australia. But big growth in places like Saudi Arabia and South Africa. And we think that that's down to the stance that the governments and organizations are sort of taking in those markets to try and grow and develop their workforces. In Australia's case, it could be, that they're part of the Five Eyes. They're quite close to China and other places like that. And so that could be playing a role there. But the stagnation was, yes, you're right, very much sort of in the more developed markets in the US in particular.
One of the things that I know came out in the first look of the study was around the shortage of key skills, but maybe more interesting was the divergence between what professionals see as some of the major skills gaps or shortages versus maybe what HR departments organizationally view as the key skill divergences. Can you highlight maybe a few of those discrepancies? And then maybe my second part would be, and for those who are members of ISC2 or who are considering being members, like what are some of the areas that you view being most critical from a skills development perspective for the cyber profession?
Yeah, so I think there was that disparity between what hiring managers and hiring the HR teams wanted and what professionals thought were important. The professionals themselves thought that communication skills, cloud computing skills, AI skills, and GRC were among the most important, whereas hiring managers prioritized, they prioritized communication skills, maybe a little bit less, but it was still important. But cloud computing, AI, and GRC were really, really low. And so what that says is the disconnect means that what's coming into the organization and what's being looked for isn't necessarily going to fit in automatically with the teams that are receiving those skill sets. We haven't gone too deeply into why that is happening, because that would involve then also surveying HR teams and so on. And we're not doing that at the moment. But what it demonstrates is there needs to be a much greater alignment between the hiring functions and talking to the individuals within those teams and finding out what they're dealing with and the areas they feel that they are lacking in order to then go and hire the right kinds of mixes. They're still getting the cloud computing skills in. It's just maybe not to the right level or the right volume that they're requiring, and that's putting more stress on the existing teams who are having to sort of cover those shortfalls while also being told, well, we've hired. What's the problem? So I think there needs to be that sort of more tight alignment between what the teams themselves are saying and the HR process.
Totally fair. One of the things, and maybe the last question I'll leave us with, because I think it is related to your answer. I have been so impressed over the last few years. In particular, ISC2 has been very adamant about really proclaiming and moving away from the term cybersecurity industry, which is someone who grew up in the space, is what we kind of refer to ourselves as, being in the industry, but now to sort of evolving into we're part of a profession. And so what you're describing and kind of like those codes and the ethics and kind of what governs as some of these new technologies come out, I guess my kind of parting question is, where does ISC2 see itself really sitting in relationship to its membership, the professionals, and then the organizations and the governments that are grappling with how to kind of systematically address some of these issues, whether it's with the workforce, the advent of AI, but anything else that affects our cybersecurity in general?
Wow, a great question. And
I'm leaving you with a big one.
I love that question. So you're right. I think it is it's got to be seen as a profession. And if you look at risk and compliance at the board level, you can't move for financial managers, legal managers, but where are the cybersecurity people? And data and information is so critical to every organization. It's more important than anything else. And there are so many sort of risk points that it can be misused and leak and what have you. And so I think the recognition that cybersecurity and information security plays that critical role in the organization, I think is slightly lacking. There's very little cyber experience at the board level across the industries. So I think that is a problem. And also, I think I was talking today to another conversation I was having, and it occurred to me that cybersecurity is a little bit like air traffic control in that it is a high stress. It so much relies on cybersecurity to get it right, and when it goes wrong, it can go really, really wrong. And that comes with burnout, that comes with stress, that comes with high degree of training, a high degree of technical expertise. It really does need to be recognized as the profession it is, and then sort of frameworks put around that in a much more defined way that controls sort of who can get in, without lowering. Keeping the gate broad without lowering the standards is something we're all trying to do. But then help, there is, if you look at the legal profession, there's any number of structures in place, codes of ethics and training and degrees and, lawyers, barristers, solicitors, they're very, very supported in their profession. They have, sort of liability insurance. It's a very, very well tried and trusted risk profession that is hundreds of years old. And I think the sooner we can get to somewhere near that for cybersecurity professionals, the better. And that involves organizations like ours, pushing the agenda and making sure that governments and other organizations recognize that. The UK's chartering cybersecurity professionals at the moment, which is again another step in the right direction of ensuring that cybersecurity professionals are recognized. Their work to get to where they got to is very, very important, and therefore they have obligations, but also they have resources that they can benefit from and support they can benefit from. And organizations like ours that need to pull together things like global codes of ethics, and we've got all these members who are very willing and able to volunteer for us. So what they think matters, and that should all go into those ethical canons. And then yes, the work that governments are doing. We have a very sort of strong advocacy arm which works with governments across the world to try and have these conversations to help the profession be sort of put up there with accountancy, with financial services, with legal, as a very high value and very well respected, professional standard.
Wonderful. Well, looking forward to it. Thank you so much for joining, Andy.
Thanks for having me on. It was great fun.
A program note, you can catch Simone and Andy's full conversation on Monday, October 14th in our CyberWire daily feed. That's also the day the ISC2 Security Congress 2024 kicks off. You can find out more about that event in our show notes. Around every entry point and every clever attacker, Vectra sees the attacks others can't. How? Vectra has AI on it. Vectra's AI attack signal intelligence tells security teams where to focus, what matters. It wades through thousands of individual threat events so you don't have to. Attackers infiltrating your network? Vectra has AI on it. Attackers compromising your identities? Vectra has AI on it. Vectra AI, the integrated signal powering your XDR. Visit vectra.ai/showme to learn more. That's vectra.ai/showme to learn more. And finally, 404 Media highlights a group of dedicated Wikipedia editors, dubbed Wiki Project AI Cleanup, who've taken up the noble and no doubt frustrating task of battling AI-generated content that's sneaking its way onto the platform. Their mission? Protect one of the world's largest information sources from falling victim to the same AI misinformation plaguing Google and Amazon. According to founding member Ilyas Lebleau, the group identified AI-generated content by spotting unnatural phrasing and suspicious catchphrases, leading to the discovery of some shocking cases, like a detailed, well-cited article on a fortress that never existed. Their work doesn't stop at fake text. AI-generated images have also slipped through the cracks, like one depicting people with mangled hands and seven-toed feet. The editors aren't just deleting AI content for being AI-generated, though. If it's relevant, it stays. Despite their efforts, Lebleau and his teammates acknowledge the challenge. AI detection tools aren't foolproof, and they often rely on human volunteers to catch errors. While Wikipedia has fared better than some of the big platforms, the editors know there's still much work to do in keeping AI-generated slop at bay. And that's the CyberWire. For links to all of today's stories, check out our daily briefing at thecyberwire.com. We'd love to know what you think of this podcast. Your feedback ensures we deliver the insights that keep you a step ahead in the rapidly changing world of cybersecurity. If you like our show, please share a rating and review in your favorite podcast app. Please also fill out the survey on the show notes or send an email to cyberwire@n2k.com. We're privileged that N2K CyberWire is part of the daily routine of the most influential leaders and operators in the public and private sector, from the Fortune 500 to many of the world's preeminent intelligence and law enforcement agencies. N2K makes it easy for companies to optimize your biggest investment, your people. We make you smarter about your teams while making your team smarter. Learn how at n2k.com. This episode was produced by Liz Stokes. Our mixer is Trey Hester, with original music and sound design by Elliot Peltzman. Our executive producer is Jennifer Iben. Our executive editor is Brandon Karpf. Simone Petrella is our president, Peter Kilpie is our publisher, and I'm Dave Bittner. Thanks for listening. We'll see you back here tomorrow. Now a word from our sponsor, the Johns Hopkins University Information Security Institute, currently seeking qualified applicants for its innovative Master of Science in Security Informatics degree program. Study alongside world-class interdisciplinary experts and gain unparalleled educational, research, and professional experience in information security and assurance. Interested U.S. citizens should consider the National Science Foundation's CyberCore Scholarship for Service program, which covers tuition, required fees, university-sponsored health insurance, and a $6,000 annual professional development allowance, as well as providing a $37,000 additional annual stipend. Apply for the scholarship and the spring semester by November 15th. Learn more at cs.jhu.edu/MSSI.